Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we are going to do the first part of what I hope to be a multiple part species spotlight on a little tiny Panaqolus. Now, Panaqolus is a word that just means the smaller size of a larger genus of fish called Panaq, all of which are wood eaters. And right now I've been growing them out up in this 20 long, just in a community setting with some green neons and a bunch of wood. They've put on a lot of size. I purchased them about a year ago from a guy from Germany named Andreas, who has written a bunch of articles about it and lectures about this fish. So they're gorgeous. They've gotten way bigger, and I want to set this aquarium up in a way that will facilitate them to breed. So we're going to pull the wood, look at the fish, clean the tank, remove the green neons, add some substrate, and put it all back together again in the hopes that will encourage this fish to spawn. So let's get started. Now I'm going to start just by dropping the water level in this aquarium. You can see that it's extremely tea-colored from all the wood that's in there. And I'm going to drop the water line and then get started removing wood and the plants so that I can catch the fish. Now I just dropped the water line because it makes it way easier to catch the fish. Now I've gathered together a bunch of materials. I have various sized caves, which I'll show you in a few minutes, some substrate, and a bucket. And the reason I have the bucket is with fish that like to hide inside caves or pieces of wood, it's not at all uncommon for them to hide so deeply into the crevices that you can't see them. So you want to make sure when you're removing decor that you put it into a bucket with some water so that if there is a fish that is trapped inside, or not trapped, but hiding inside the wood, you don't leave them dry on the floor. So we're going to put some water in this bucket, grab the decor, and see what we find. Now I did place the tank water in the bucket. I'm going to start by removing these little caves that I have around, checking carefully to make sure there's no fish inside. Now, as I mentioned, this particular Panaqolus, which is from Brazil or Guyana, they are wood eaters, so it's especially important to make sure that you have plenty of driftwood for them, as it's a primary part of their diet. Now you can feed them prepared foods as well, but you want to make sure that you're not feeding them too much protein, or they can get really bloated and grow quicker than they would normally. If you watch, you can see the fish coming out of the crevices of the rocks. And this is why you check it over carefully and place it into a bucket. Plecos aren't always the brightest bunch, and they will absolutely stay inside the wood when you take it out of water. So I'm removing all this wood so that I can do a really intense gravel vacuum and clean this tank up really well before I add the substrate. Now, Panaqolus are not quite as shy as things like Hypancistris, which you rarely see in the aquarium. A lot of times you'll see these guys just out and about during the time when the lights are on. But like most pleco species, they don't spend a lot of time in the open, much preferring to be in caves. I'm just going to grab a small gauge siphon to clean up all this debris. Now this may seem like a lot of dirt in an aquarium, but as I mentioned, these are wood eaters. They're grazing on the wood constantly, and it does make a lot of dust-type debris in the aquarium. And because of that, I do water changes a couple times a week on this tank to keep it nice and clean and the water quality good. This isn't a difficult species to keep. It's basically the same as keeping like a clown pleco. Which are great community fish. They do like things a little bit on the warmer side. I'm just catching out the green neons, which again is made way easier by this really low water line, because they don't have that much space to avoid me. And in general, if you're trying to catch fish to remove them from an aquarium, taking out a lot of the water is really the easiest way. So instead of it taking me a while to catch all these green neons, it just took a few seconds. I am going to grab my substrate and a cup and carefully add that in. For substrate, I chose an inert gravel made by Carob Sea. It's the same one that I used in my 150 gallon. And I like it because it's totally inert. It has a really natural color and a relatively small grain size. Now these fish are not substrate spawners. I'm simply doing this because if they do have babies, a lot of people say that having a light coating of gravel on the bottom of the aquarium is better for the juvenile fish. So I'm going to add just a thin layer of gravel so it'll continue to be really easy to clean this aquarium, but it won't be bare glass should I get baby fish. Now this is a gravel that I don't need to rinse. It's not very dirty. It might make things slightly cloudy, but nothing particularly dramatic. I'm just going to let this settle down for a minute and then we'll start adding wood back. Now as you can see, the aquarium's a bit stirred up, but I'm going to go ahead and start adding wood back. I'm also going to add some various caves. You can see that already in there, and we'll take a closer look here when everything's done and settled down, that there are the smash mouth caves that the L306 like. I've shown you those in the past. I'm going to add some of these bell caves, making sure all the trapped air is out, and then put in a lot of wood. Now, similar to other pleco species, these guys, the males do guard the eggs, and I don't know if they'll breed in the wood or in caves, so I want to make sure that I'm giving them plenty of options. I'm not even sure what gender ratio I have. I believe I have 4 of these guys, but we're going to set it up for success as best we can and try and make it look halfway decent in the process. Now you can buy these caves online from South Central Cichlids or plecocaves.com, and they're all very good. So I've got round mouth caves, squash mouth caves, rectangular caves, and square caves. It's pretty much every shape that they make, and they all have this pinched end, and that's because male plecos like to trap the females in the cave in order to spawn. Now males of this genus can get a bit territorial to each other, so it's important to provide plenty of caves, as well as ample wood for them to graze on. As I mentioned, that's an incredibly important part of their diet. So I'll link to it, but I've shown you guys lots of times how I set up ancestral breeding caves, and I'm basically going to do the same thing here. Picking a range of wood to create a layered effect of caves within the aquarium. Now, these fish don't require plants, but as with almost all my aquariums, I'll likely add some just because it helps keep the tank cleaner. It provides surfaces for baby fish to graze on, and I just think it looks nicer. Now, I choose to use Malaysian driftwood in this aquarium simply because, as I mentioned, these guys graze on wood, and it lasts a long time. Some of the finer woods, like the manzanita that I like to use, just wouldn't hold up to these guys, and they're rasping. I'm also adding a bunch of pieces of wood that have these holes in them that the fish prefer. You want to make sure that you're stacking this in a pretty secure manner so that the caves can't fall, or the wood can't fall on the fish. And as I've shown you in previous videos, I like to put caves on different levels as well. And apparently drop them on my foot. And again, this is simply to allow for various territories of the fish to prevent any issues with the male aggression. Now Now, because it's floating around in here, I'm going to tuck some Anubius into the nooks and crannies. Though again, as I mentioned, it's certainly not at all required to have plants in a pleco aquarium, especially, well, at least this species. I also have this huge mat of Java moss. I'm going to pull out some of the random rhizomes and other plants that are trapped in it and just tuck that into the wood as well. And this is, I'm just adding plants again because I like them, not that these fish require them. I like to see green in all my aquariums, or almost all my aquariums. So we'll give this tank a few minutes to settle down and then we'll take a closer look at the fish and I'll tell you a bit more about them. It's been about 15 minutes and you can see the tank has cleared up nicely. Now this is not a carefully aquascaped show tank like some of my others, but it should serve these fish really, really well. Now they're still a bit shook from me messing in their aquarium, so we're not seeing a whole lot of them, but there are 4 or 5 of the L306s in here, as well as one random L236. And that should be not at all problematic to house them together, at least for the duration. This aquarium's kept at about 82 degrees. I do supplement the fish with a vegetable-based diet like rapashi, but it's infrequent since they are predominantly wood grazers. Now the males are reported to get anywhere from 3.5 to 5 inches. I tend to lean to the side of the 5 inches because that's what's reported by the guy that bred these that I got them from. I did attend a talk on keeping and housing and breeding this fish, and it was absolutely fascinating. They're a deep, rich, orangish brown with darker brown stripes, and as soon as they stop feeling shy, I'll be sure to show you what they look like. You can sex them by the females being way wider through the pectoral region, as well as the males growing odontodes, sort of on the spot right below their gill plate, as well as down their back. These are not an inexpensive fish, though as they've become more available to various hobbyists and being bred more and more, their price is coming down. I'm really hoping that they're going to become pretty popular for a Brazilian or South American warm water aquarium. You can see one right in there. He's also sharing a cave with the 236 at the moment because they're upset with me, but you can see the orange and black stripes. The reason I took the tetras out of this aquarium is because if these guys do spawn, I don't want anything that's going to pick off the fry. The 236 is seeming a bit curious. They're another beautiful pleco that I hope to get more of soon in order to set up either a breeding aquarium or just have to offer for sale. But you can see the tail of the Panaqolus hanging out there. Now these are a formally classified species, and their species name is Panaqolus claustellifer. And again, they're just really, really beautiful. So we'll let them settle in a bit more, drop in some food, and see if we can't tempt them out of their caves. Here you can see one just hanging out in the cave, and they really are very beautiful. Of course, I'm prone to orange and brown fish anyway, but this is a pretty common sight for a pleco tank, just seeing a tail hanging out of a cave. There's another one over here, but my camera is having a very difficult time focusing on it. So these guys are maintaining being a bit shy from all the disruption in their aquarium. So make sure you're subscribed, because I will do a full update on these guys in the near future when I can catch them out and about. There is one there. There's one here. But we can't really see them well enough to get the best idea of how gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous this little pleco is. You can see that they have those nice, deep, dark stripes with the orangish red borders. There's another one in this cave that you may just barely be able to make out on the left-hand side there. I keep hoping that they're going to come out to the front, but for some reason fish don't seem to care when we want to see them, and they do what they will. Now it's also difficult to get good video of these guys since they hide in the wood where the tank tends to be darker. But I think at least from this you can see how pretty they are. The striping in that dorsal and the gorgeous coloration that they get. I will do my best to spy on these fish and get a really great update for you guys in the future so that you can see what they truly look like. And maybe we can even take a guess at the genders that I have when we can get a better view. Now, it's generally easiest to sex plecos from a top view or when they're actively spawning and you can vent them. But we'll see what we can do here. As always, thank you guys for your continued support. Make sure you're following me on Instagram where I put a lot of extra pictures and footage from around the fish room and the tubs. Make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell on so you don't miss any of the updates on these fish as well as the many other tanks in the fish room.